What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here. Welcome into the Thomas Mott Show, being joined by a very special guest, Dave Spadaro, who, of course, is the Eagles insider. I mean, Dave, I've always called you the Eagles reporter because you are the guy. I appreciate you coming on here.
Hey, Thomas, thanks for having me. And, coming off the bye week, feeling refreshed. We got a college football season ahead of us, 11 regular season games. So, bring on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Are you a fan of these early buys? I mean, I've always been more of a later
Sure.
buy because of injuries, but Philadelphia had all those offensive line injuries. Seemed like it came at a good time.
I mean, you don't look a gift horse in the mouth, right? Like, we started really grinding in late July when training camp opened.
Right.
Go through the preseason regular. So whenever you have a chance to get a 4-day weekend, you take it. So, but for the football team, obviously you'd prefer it to be later in the season. Not the Eagles' call. You make the best of it. The way I look at it, the Eagles did have some offensive line players who were banged up a bit. And, I think you always appreciate it. And then you kind of look down the road and you go, all right, in 2 weeks, there'll be a mini bye week after the Houston game. And then it will really be a grind for 9 weeks. And you just hope, and I feel like Nick is really good at kind of taking the foot off the gas pedal at times.
Yeah.
So he'll give his players enough rest. And, you just hope a veteran team knows how to take care of its body down the stretch. And, I think it's going to be really exciting. As the schedule now looks, Thomas, like all those games against the Giants, those 2 games against the Giants,
Right.
that game on Christmas Eve against the Cowboys, they are really important games. So the Eagles will be fresh and ready to go.
How do you view the New York Giants? Because I'm very torn on this, and a lot of people who watch my show are too. It's like, okay, you have to recognize the fact that they're winning football games, but at the same time, you look through the roster and it's like, okay, there's no receiver. Their offensive line is still a little bit iffy. Defense plays well at times, but who's their best cornerback? Do you see them as a legitimate threat in the NFC East, or are they more just overachieving what we kind of thought would be a 7 or 8 win football team?
Yeah, I think I just wrote about this actually on Monday. I feel like we've got enough of a sample size now to understand what the Giants are. And
Yeah.
they're a team that is playing really hard for Brian Daboll. They are a team that is playing to its strengths, which is Saquon Barkley until he falls over, and making sure that Daniel Jones doesn't turn the football over. He's done a good job with that, and he's doing a good job with his legs. And they're winning games in the fourth quarter. I mean,
Yeah.
do I see them as a team that that's going to sustain this? I don't know that, but like, if the Eagles are winning that way, I'd say, well, this is a team that's finding a way to win. So I guess I got to give the credit to the New York Giants too, because they're finding ways to win. And but when you if you were to tell me at the beginning of the season that 7 weeks into the year that as the landscape appears in the NFC, that your biggest obstacles are the New York Giants, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Minnesota Vikings, I would have said, I'll sign up for that.
Yeah,
So, I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it.
The trade deadline is always big in terms of people who do online shows like myself. And I mean, it's same with radio people and people like you, especially this year with Philadelphia. There are so many comparisons to 2017 and the Jay Ajayi move and how it didn't feel that big, at least to me in 2017. It was like, okay, yeah, another running back would be nice, but his impact was massive. Talk me through what you look at this NFL trade deadline. The biggest need for the Eagles right now, is it pass rusher? Is it running back? Do they have one?
So I look at it this way, and I really would prefer not to answer biggest need. I look at it like Howie Roseman has a chance with the assets that he has to make a move if he chooses to upgrade the roster.
There you
And,
go.
the way you do it, you don't always, it's like going into the draft. You don't go, I need to get this position. I think the way Howie looks at it is you go and say, if I can upgrade the roster anywhere, and this is not a perfect roster. There's no such thing as a perfect roster. So if the opportunity to presents itself, if you can get better at safety, some more depth at safety, more depth at cornerback, another pass rusher, a linebacker, whatever, you go do it. And the Eagles are certainly positioned with the assets, the extra draft capital that they have to do so. And we'll see. I mean, I know the names that are mentioned out there, and I know a first-round draft pick too, and it takes 2 to get Brian Burns to blah, 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 blah. I don't know. I don't have a sense of what will happen here. I do know that Howie keeps his eyes open all the time. Would it surprise me if the Eagles made a trade? No, because anything Howie does doesn't surprise me. And I've learned to be that he's the most aggressive GM in the league. So But I look at it again, Thomas. Like I look at it like if you can upgrade your roster anywhere, that's a plus. But I don't look. I also look at this roster and go, there's not one position I go, wow, the Eagles are really lacking there. I think this roster is as complete as there is anywhere in the league, and certainly top of the class in the NFC.
There are definitely a lot of people, especially who comment on my show, who said, well, you have to go get Burns. You have to get Robert Quinn. We need Josh Jacobs. And I agree with what you just said. Howie very much is well, if there's an opportunity, I'll do it. The report yesterday with Chris McCaffrey, it's not like it didn't, to me, seem like Howie was really trying to get Chris McCaffrey. It seemed like he picked up the phone and said, hey, what's the price? Is he on a discount? And when he saw what the 49ers were asking, he was out, and rightfully so. And I think you're right in terms of the fact that the Eagles don't need anybody right now. They can pass on Brian Burns for 2 first-round draft picks or whatever it is and still be, one of the best sack teams in the National Football League as they've had. It's just interesting to me that every single year we get to the trade deadline and Eagle fans are clamoring to go ahead and make one final move. And maybe it's just us. It's just how Eagle fans are. But it is going to be very fascinating to see if they actually go ahead and do make a move. But let's just say they don't. If they don't, I think you just mentioned it, this roster is as complete as they come. I can't see another roster top to bottom as good as this in the NFC besides Minnesota, but we already beat them.
Yeah, I don't really see Minnesota's offensive line as deep as what the Eagles have. I know that they've got Dalvin Cook and they're good in their backfield. I'm a really big fan of what the Eagles have, the 4 running backs that they have, because I'm a big Trey Sermon fan.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, like, even a backup quarterback that Minnesota matches up with Gardner Minshew. So I'm not really worried about them. I say this, like, I understand, Thomas, why Eagles fans feel that way. And it's because Howie has set this expectation of being an aggressive GM. And it makes perfect sense that you have that expectation of him. And again, he is in a position of power. Look, the Eagles know that the opportunity that's in front of them this year, that this is not this. What I always resisted in the summer when people were saying the Eagles are pushing all their chips into the middle of the table, because they're not, because the Eagles still have a bunch of chips in their hands, all those extra draft picks. So if you want to push all your chips in, then you're dealing away those future draft picks. And to this point, they've not done that. Now, hey, I'd be, certainly my eyes would be wide open if Howie did that. But again, I can't be surprised by anything he does or does not do. He's got a really good pulse of what's happening around the league. He's got a really good understanding of what this roster is. And I'm all for, if there is a way to upgrade and strengthen this team, not just for these final 11 games, but for the 11 games and hopefully the playoffs, then I'm all for it. And then this team also looks into the future. So, if you can bring somebody in to help this year and who's got some gas left for the years to come, great. We've got 10 days here, or not 6 days, 7 days here to find out. It's going to be a really fun week.
Are you a draft pick guy? Because you just mentioned, obviously we all love draft picks, but you just mentioned the 2 first-round draft picks next year. That seems to be kind of the main bargaining chip that Eagle fans are saying, well, you could just use one of them and then keep the other one. I've said consistently on my show, I would much rather have draft picks just for the fact that, one, you have a chance of getting an absolute superstar. Like, what Brian Burns is, who's really good, or what Chubb is, or whoever else you want to trade for. But Will Anderson looms with the Saints pick being very, very high. Are you more towards the side of keep the draft picks unless there's a really fair trade, or do you kind of like to shuffle your draft picks around and make moves?
For me, I look at next year and go, if the Eagles have the Saints' first pick and the Saints continue down this path, that first pick becomes way more than a single first pick, because with teams looking to trade up to get a quarterback, they will always overpay. So you can take that asset. You want to maximize every asset that you have. This is the strength of Howie Roseman. Take that singular asset, not just for a player or a pick, see what you can get for it. And more often than not, when you're talking about potentially a pick that's going to be in your top 5, 6, 7,
right,
and teams are trading up and they're desperate for quarterbacks, they're going to overpay. And that one pick is going to become multiple picks for the future. So, I'm more along the lines of keeping that particular draft pick. I'm not trading, potentially a top 4, 5, 6 pick.
Right.
That just gets a little bit, that's an awfully valuable piece, unless you think you are bringing in a true difference-making player. Now, however you value the names that you're giving me, That's Thomas Mott's evaluation.
Right.
If Howie Roseman thinks that those names are difference-making players, and I'm not talking about this year, I'm talking about a difference-making player, then you consider everything.
This team again gets compared to 2017 a bunch. And I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but you're one of the few people that gets to really be inside the building all the time and be around the football team. And there are a lot of media people in Philadelphia who are in press conferences and get to go to the side of training camp and stuff like that. But you're actually in there. How does it compare to 2017? Because I look back on that year and it has a lot of similarities. You can think back to Carson Wentz, really popping in his second year. Young Jalen Hurts. Doug was still kind of young in terms of an NFL head coach. Nick Sirianni is there. Are there more comparisons between the 2017 team and this team, or more differences, you'd say?
I think there's probably more comparisons. A really strong offensive line, a second-year coach with a young quarterback. The difference, I would say, is that we, in 2017, I'm not sure anybody really felt that was a real. It wasn't coming off a playoff appearance. I don't think that wasn't like a real. You're going into the season going, yes, this is going to be a really good team.
Right.
And not until Jake Elliott's 61-yard field goal ignited a 9-game win streak, during which you're blowing out the Bears, you're blowing out the Broncos, you're whipping up on the Niners. And then you go, okay, this is a pretty special team. I mean, we kind of knew in 2022 here that this, after the offseason the team had, and when you go out there and you watch A.J. Brown kill in practice every day, and you watch this young defense starting to come together, and then you get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, you go, whoa, this is pretty good team here. So I think we kind of knew going into this season that this had a chance to be a good team. I don't feel like we felt that in 17. I felt maybe it would be a better team than it was in 16.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody felt it was going to be a Super Bowl team until you got into the process and just saw the Eagles crushing teams.
You mentioned a couple of those new additions, A.J. Brown, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I've talked a lot about James Bradbury on the show. Is there one of the many new additions, Jordan Davis in there, who's really impressed you the most? Because for me, the C.J. Gardner-Johnson trade came so late, and I wasn't quite sure how quickly he would go ahead and get integrated. It took him like a week or two, and then he was really ready to rock. We knew A.J. Brown would be good. For me, it was James Bradbury, just because the Eagles' history, signing free agent cornerbacks, the Byron Maxwell disaster, Nnamdi Asomugha years and years and years ago when I was a little kid was terrible. I just could not believe that Bradbury would come in after giving up a bunch of touchdowns last year and be as dominant as he has been. Is he the most shocking Eagle or the new addition Eagle this year, or is it someone else?
So let me take it in different categories. So I would say Kaiser White is the one who, in that sense, the most surprising guy. Because he was kind of a second-level free agent, second week, 1-year deal. Right. Nobody really wanted him, and he's been a stud. And you see what really good linebackers, what an impact it has on the defense. But from a changing the complexion of the defense, I would probably see Reddick, because they would lack such a pass rush last year. What's so interesting is like every single one of these guys has made such a tremendous impact. But the reason I was trying to angle toward agreeing with you on Bradbury from the sense of when you have two cornerbacks who can shut down any kind of receiver, the way that changes the dynamic of the secondary, it really is extraordinary. And Steven Nelson was okay, good professional, but Bradbury has been at a different level. And then to bring in CJ and team him with Epps, and it makes you realize, oh my gosh, as much as I loved Anthony Harris, and I think Rodney McLeod's an all-timer, I love him. Rodney at that time was dragging that knee around. Anthony, kind of a fringe player. When you have two safeties that are this athletic, it makes a huge difference in the secondary and the way you cover and the way you get to the football and the way that you take the football away. And then I go back to the front end and, the impact that Hassan has had on the pass rush, and, Jordan Davis, the way he's added to that 5-man defensive tackle rotation, and keeping Fletcher healthy and fresh and just look, here's the comparison from 17 to now. In 17, Howie went out before the season as afterthoughts and got Chris Long and Patrick Robinson, and later on added Ajayi and Torrey Smith, and you go, okay, every one of those pieces fit perfectly,
right?
And guess what? Every one of these pieces is fitting perfectly with this football team. So sometimes you go, wow, you just got that magic going on. And so far, so good for what Howie has brought in, and so far, so good for what those players are fitting in and, knock on wood, staying healthy.
It is amazing that you can have an offseason where almost everything hits. And I know that a lot of teams do a lot of big moves during the offseason, but not all of them hit. And Philadelphia's had this problem in the past too. You sign somebody who's big. We mentioned Byron Maxwell, even massive contract, and he does nothing. But it feels like, as you just mentioned, every single player so far, only 6-7 games in, has really not only gelled well, and that's big, but also played extremely well to get Philadelphia to 6-0. Also, we have to at least get into Jalen Hurts a little bit here, and he's probably the main person that drives the whole train in terms of the media, the big talking point, fan base, and then, of course, the team as a whole. It's hard to find a question for him because it's easy to say, well, he's so much better than he was last year, and he truly is. Is there something you've seen being around him that's really surprised you from where he was last year to this year that really stands out above the rest?
I mean, you have to really go back to, and I know it's not a great storyline, but I think maybe people just don't understand that from his days in high school, and I know it's brought up on TV, this is only the first time since high school that he's had the same play caller / offensive coordinator in back-to-back seasons. So imagine, you're learning a new language. You take 1 year of French, and then, you got to change language next year.
Right.
All right, I'll take 1 year of German. But, well, he's actually been into this for a second year, and that's made a huge difference. His awareness, his recognition, his accuracy, his timing. I think having big receiver in AJ really helps, the ability to kind of trust your receiver and throw it up. And at times there's going to be 50-50 balls. And Goddard and Brown and Smith are winning those 50-50 balls. I mean, otherwise, Jalen has always had the confidence. He's always had the it factor. He's been very good protecting the football, but he's got the people around him now. I think that's been a factor. Getting AJ Brown, huge. Having the offensive line come back intact, huge. And then just being a second year in the system. The coaching staff knows him more. He knows them more. He knows the system more. It's made a difference. Now, look, this offense has been far from perfect. Mm-hmm. They have not put together 60 minutes. They have gotten hit on the blitz a bit, okay? So there's things in the bye week here that the Eagles really worked on. I'm interested very much to see how they come out of this bye and, project for the rest of the regular season in terms of playing more consistently through the course of an entire game. That's the next goal.
Do you think the inconsistency is a play calling problem? Do you think that they get a little complacent? Because I've been trying to figure this out, and a lot of people comment saying, oh, we struggle in the third quarter. Or, oh my gosh, we're struggling in the fourth quarter. And it's been fine so far because you come back and you kick a field goal to go ahead against the Cardinals. The touchdown drive against Dallas was huge. I just can't seem to figure it out on my own, watching from afar. Does Steichen change the play calling up? Nah. Like, are they not putting the foot pedal all the way down? What do you see in terms of not having the consistency that you just mentioned?
I mean, maybe, look, if there's something that is intangible, it would be that little tiny lapse of urgency in the second half. But I don't think it's play calling. I think it's a lack of execution. I think it's just not being as crisp. And I think if you're off in the NFL by just a scintilla, you see the difference. You get stopped. So they need to be, continue to be aggressive. They need to continue to be urgent. They need to execute. They need to, just play their kind of football. They're not going to look. They scored 112 points in the second quarter of game this year. It's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. That's just not going to continue. So you always want to start fast. You want to finish strong, and in between, you want to, just keep rolling it and keep moving the chains and keep putting points on the board. And I think, Thomas, in a weird way, I'm glad the way this is playing out because I'm glad that people are still questioning the Eagles, and I'm glad that this team doesn't feel like it's peaking in October. Because teams that peak in October, you're not winning anything. So I think this team's really, really hungry to get better, and that's exciting.
Give me something on Nick Sirianni, because the Eagles have had fascinating coaches throughout my entire lifetime. I mean, Chip Kelly was in there, and then, of course, Doug Peterson went to the Super Bowl, and then he's gone. Year 2 of Nick Sirianni, he gets a little bit of recognition by the national media, and I don't know if you would agree with this. I feel like he gets a little bit glossed over in terms of like, oh, well, Nick Sirianni is leading the Eagles, but Hurts. And again, Jalen Hurts is great, but Sirianni, he was completely dogged last year, completely disrespected as the press conference. The opening one was terrible. Some of the play calling decisions were awful. I mean, he was ripped to shreds. And this year he looks great. What's something that's unique about Sirianni that you've seen versus the Petersons of the world, the Kellys, the Andy Reids?
All right, so let's go back because I want to take you to task on something you just said. For sure, the opening press conference,
Yes.
and it was the most ridiculous criticism I have ever
I know.
heard in my career. He's standing in an empty auditorium. He's got a bunch of media, ugly media guy faces up on the
Right.
screen. It's his one moment, so he's trying to read after Jeffrey Lurie was on for 40 minutes talking and thanking the world and doing his thing. And so he stumbled a little bit, and people like criticized him for that.
I
It
know.
was ridiculous. The thing I'll take it to task on, I don't remember him, the play calling. Okay, they threw the ball a bit early.
Right.
The thing about Nick that I'll really defend, and one of the many reasons I think he could be a great coach, is they don't blow timeouts. They've never blown timeouts. They're not called for delays of game. You generally don't look at the game plan and go, he really botched it all. Now, I know they made the switch from Nick to Shane, but I'm still calling this Nick's offense.
Right.
I know they went from more of a passing-oriented offense to let's run the ball predominantly last year. I get that. But I didn't think when they were 2-5, the problem was play calling. I thought that they were just not a very good team at that point, and playing against a pretty good schedule of teams that were whipping up on them. So, and that's first 7 games. So I think Nick has every attribute that you want in a great head coach. He's got incredible energy every day. So your message always stays fresh. He's really good to the players. The thing that made Chip Kelly such a fraud was that a player wants to see the coach give as much as the players are giving,
Right.
and give as much as the coach is asking of the players. And Chip didn't do that with this really basic offense that never changed. It was just nothing there. Just run. Nick is innovative. Nick listens to his players. Nick is hard on them when he has to be. Nick is imperfect. Nick is genuine. Nick is going to defend the players. Nick is going to jump around on the sidelines like we all would if we were in that position. He just wears it out on the sleeve. He's this Italian guy who just wears his emotions out on his sleeve, and I think the players really appreciate that. He also happens to be a damn fine coach who puts the time in to put players in great positions to succeed, and that's what they want. So, look, with him, he's everything you see. I mean, he wears the silly T-shirts, and that actually resonates with the players and with the other teams, and it resonates with the fans. And he knows he knows how the fans are. He's got his wife sitting in the stands. She's hearing it, and so like it's a really healthy. He's just a really healthy, spirited, bright, fresh, energetic mind who everybody in the building is rooting for, loves, and has not divided the building at all. Has been great to everybody. He responds to everything that the Eagles ask him to do, which is a lot. And so far so great with Nick Sirianni. When we get into hopefully the postseason, the Eagles need to make more steps here, right? Like you got to advance. So, but yeah, I think Nick is up for the challenge. I think he's got the makings of not a good but a great head coach.
It is nice to see Eagle fans start to, I think, understand what they've gotten in Nick Sirianni, because it seems like the mold is all, we got to get Sean McVay. Like, where's Sean McVay? We have to find him. And it wasn't really mentioned, I think, whenever Sirianni was hired. Like, the comparisons weren't there because, who is this guy coming over from Frank Reich's offensive system? What is he actually going to do? It feels like you're getting, and he's not Sean McVay, two different
why?
people.
Why is that? Why is Sean McVay?
Well, it just feels like
he's more Hollywood guy.
Well, maybe more Hollywood, but it feels like for the past 3 or 4 or 5 years, the national media says if you can find the next Sean McVay, you're going to be successful. I don't think Eagle fans realize that they have not their own version of him, but they have that young offensive coordinator, offensive-minded guy who very much resonates with the players. And what you talked about with the guys seem to love him, and he seems to love the guys, and it's making a big difference, I think, in front of Eagle fans.
So I mean, the reason he's not Sean McVay is because he's not, on every commercial, and he's not doesn't memorize every play, and he'll show up at a press conference and he'll look like his eyes are bloodshot and hasn't shaven. He looks like a drowned rat, because that's after a game, like that's what he does. He's just like if the Eagles lose, he beats himself up, and he admits like he lives it. He's not a pretty boy. He's here to be a coach, and like and he's gonna the story about him challenging some Giants fan on the tennis court. I mean, I don't even know if that's true. I don't know if anybody ever asked him. Like, that's a fun story. So
Yeah.
I mean, Nick is unique. He's unique from what I've seen in this position. I mean, I go back a lot longer than Chip Kelly. I go back a lot. I go back to the Buddy Ryan days. And
Right.
actually, when I first started covering the Eagles when I was in college, it was Marion Campbell. And so these are all old school football guys. And from Buddy to Rich Kotite to Ray Rhodes, just all different kinds of personalities. And then Andy Reid. So Nick's different than all that breed, and he's kind of the new way of coach. And somebody who's not afraid to give up authority, Thomas, that's something that doesn't happen much. And for him to give up the play calling to Shane Steichen, that tells me a lot about a coach.
Let's go ahead and wrap up here with a quick look at the Steeler game on Sunday. It's very easy, I think, for Eagle fans looking at the line right now. The Eagles are double-digit favorites. I think it's like 10 or 11. And you saw the Pittsburgh Steelers offense at least do nothing on Sunday Night Football. And so this seems to be from a lot of casual Eagle fans. Oh, Philadelphia 6-0, they should roll. I'm not going to say I'm worried about the Pittsburgh Steelers because the Eagles are great and they should be able to win. But I think that defensively, they can cause you some issues that could make the Eagles maybe get a little bit of a slow start. They're going to have to climb their way back in the football game.
Yeah, what the Steelers have done without TJ Watt is they've really kind of mixed up their approach, and they're kind of throwing everything into that game plan. What they did against Tom Brady a couple of weeks ago, really impressive. On Sunday night against the Miami Dolphins, they had a chance for 6 interceptions and just couldn't come up with the plays. They're doing different things. They're throwing out different personnel packages. They're always very aggressive, so they always want to play downhill. So I believe they'll come after Jalen Hurts with the blitz, and I feel like they'll take their chances on the back end and try to make Jalen Hurts win this game with his arm. And so, what I want to see is the Eagles come out sharp after the bye week. I want to see them come out with incredible urgency. You're right. Everybody thinks the Eagles are going to win this game out there. So what happens out there can't get into here in the NovaCare complex. And as much as you want to believe that to be the case, where the players don't listen to all that stuff, they've just had a long weekend. In fact, no, they took off last Monday. They were off for a whole week.
Yeah.
Where they've had everybody tell them how great they are and how wonderful they are and how they're the only 6-0 team. And boy, oh boy. Well, let's hope they didn't listen to it. So that's how I look at this test on Sunday. How much precision, Thomas, one of the great stats for this football team this year, the number of penalties, 10 in the first game, 8 in the second game, 5 in the third game, blah, blah, all the way down. And the Eagles are now, I think, 7th in the NFL and in most penalties, fewest penalties, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to see a game on Sunday where they come out and it's sloppy and it's mental mistakes and dropping passes and missing tackles. Come out sharp, come out with a purpose, take care of business, get your recovery, and then go to Houston on a short week, which again is another one of those games you go, Houston Texans are nothing. There is really very little margin for error in the NFC East right now. With whatever you think about the Giants, with the way the Giants are playing, with the way the Cowboys are playing, with the way their schedule's set up, Eagles cannot afford to falter. And so let's see them play like that on Sunday against the Steelers.
I was asked on Twitter yesterday, Thomas, do the Eagles need to lose in order to kind of, ground themselves a little bit and prepare themselves for a deep playoff run? And I think about that question. It feels so dumb, but it gets asked all the time when you're undefeated. Do you need to lose in case you need to deal with adversity or something like that? Do you think Philadelphia needs to? It's such a stupid question, but I keep getting asked it. Needs to lose one at least sometime in the future in order to.
I don't look at it that way. I mean, if you want to have me back on after week 13 or 14, and if the Eagles are still unbeaten, then we can talk about it. But right. I mean, they're 6-0 right now. There's no it's preposterous to look at the end of the season. So many things can happen. This game changes very quickly. Injuries can completely alter the complexion of a team. So, no, the Eagles, they do not need to lose on Sunday against the Steelers. In fact, the Eagles need to win on Sunday against the Steelers.
There you go. I like that. Last question here, and then I'll let you go. Give us a little insight into the rest of the week for Dave Spadaro. I think a lot of people love you and watch you on Eagles.com. Everyone thinks that you have like the coolest job in terms of Philadelphia fan base because you get to be there every single day. What's the rest of your week look like? Are you practice?
Looks like this. I mean, this is my office. It's my little. I'll show you my little office here. It's just got got my little green thumb there. Got my all my little stuff that I've had over the years. I've been here. I have the tennis channel on.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, I'm a big tennis guy. Got my Reggie White jersey. So my week is all Eagles. I mean, I hit up a lot of local, all these little up there is all my stuff. We won some best website in the league awards way back when, and some tellies and stuff. Local Emmy. My bobblehead collection. Well, I got to show my bobblehead collection. I used to have a ton more bobbleheads, but wait, how do I do that?
Jeez, there they are. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I go to practice and do a lot of interviews and do a lot of shows and yeah. I mean, I do have I think I have a really super cool job and I appreciate that and I really appreciate the job and my job is to keep fans engaged. It's not about me; it's about the fans. Because without the fans, there would be no me. I keep the fans engaged until kickoff. So, in all sorts of media, my Eagles Insider podcast, I do a daily an Eagles update podcast every day for a few minutes, just kind of that morning cup of coffee with the Eagles thing. We do live stuff here. I do interviews with players, in the locker room every day, and writing, whether it's writing or doing appearances or hosting shows or hosting fan events, that's kind of what I do. And then we get to game days and it's showtime and I'm doing TV, radio, web, on the field, on the boards with the microphone, player interviews after the game, preview interviews. I mean, Thomas, whatever kind of media there is, I'm doing it. And again, my job is it's not about me. Nobody wants to hear from me anymore. They want to hear about the team. Right. So my job is to provide access and a bit of a window inside this building. I'm the only insider. And, it's been my honor to do this now in my 26th season as a member of the Eagles. And, hopefully, it'll fly for however many years the Eagles will have me. I will continue to do it. I love it. And I just think it's a great time to be in Philly, obviously, with what the Phillies are doing, with what the Union are doing. Sixers and Flyers are starting and going to have good seasons. So it's an awesome time to be here. And, that's kind of my week. It's all Eagles.
There you go. Well, I'll speak for all Eagle fans that we appreciate everything that you do in the inside look, especially during training camp is fantastic. I'll speak for myself that's huge for us in terms of other media people. So Dave, I appreciate it.
Back in the old days, we used to actually broadcast practices from Lehigh with guys holding laptop.
I remember doing it. I remember watching as a kid. It's like I had to get my Eagles fix. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Dave, that's what we're here to give you the Eagles fix. Exactly right. To satisfy that fix.
Well, Dave, I appreciate you coming on here for the show. I'd love to have you on in the future and go
Anytime.
Birds on Sunday.
My pleasure. Go Birds, and thank you so much. Great job.